Welcome. Parsha Shoftim speaks about prophets. Most people probably relate that to money. And in fact, there's some truth to that, because prophecy is tied into prediction of future events. And the future events are predicted to be a state of tremendous wealth. Madani matsuyim ka'afar. Delicacies as common as dust. Dust because we won't be connecting with that. The environment will be a means to connect to the author of the environment, Hashem. And the author speaks through prophets. Torah can be discussed, is present in also thought, the level of thought. Even though we say leis machshava tfisa beklal, you cannot fathom Hashem with thought. You cannot grasp Hashem in thought at all. So the idea of Torah is, as much as you can understand, you'll never grasp, because there is the origin is the one, the Bal HaRatzin, the one who has the will to create a system where there's good and bad, and that we're directed what to do. That authorship, the original status, the author of the Torah, is above understanding. So you have two things. Hashem communicates to us through Torah, through teachings of the Torah that are really above our ability to understand. It's more like the way a shafet, a judge, sits upon his authority. So the Torah has this idea of having the power of sitting above. That above is represented in the idea that Torah is really beyond the world, not something that you could truly use to understand Hashem in his fullest. It is more like a submission. Prophecy is different than that, because prophecy is something specifically that is invested within the mind of the prophet. It has mortal personality inherent to it. Unlike Torah, which is pure dictation. It makes no sense in a way to say that God assumed a certain narrative in a written format when physics wouldn't be able to find the pen. So the idea of the authorship of the Torah is beyond the world. The idea of prophecy, in contrast, is something that only exists when it comes through the intelligence, the mind, the personage of the speaker of the prophecy, which is a person. It's not a direct dictation. So therefore, prophecy is tied in with advice, with understanding, with bringing things to clarity and purpose, by making it understood to be of purpose, as opposed to something that you just accept and submit yourself to. Torah has that deference, that submission, whereas prophecy has to do with communication, and therefore it's not considered prophecy if it doesn't enter the realm of speech. There is a listening that is inherent to prophecy that's always expressed and articulated. I don't know, it's not necessary for anyone to hear it except the prophet himself. The idea of him speaking means it brings it into a certain dimension of it has to be that way. The fact is that has to be that way, I've learned recently, only has to do with the idea of if there could possibly be a doubt. Once a prophecy is spoken, and here it's in specifics when it's actually written down, then it becomes a document attesting to the future events of what's something going to be, and therefore if someone could possibly have a doubt if that was changed because we changed and therefore our destiny changes. If it's written down, it cannot be rescinded because there are those who would doubt that it had divine origin. It didn't come to happen. It doesn't. But if there's no doubter, if there's no heckler in the audience when you're speaking, can you imagine the things that you could say? When we are communicated to, you don't need the officer anymore to enforce. You don't need your own submission to enforce. It's something that speaks to us. Prophecy advice is about something that speaks to us in a way that makes 100% crystal clear sense to us in a way of Das, experiencing that way. That's what the speech in prophecy represents the idea that it's not just a thought that never quite is understood. It's a spoken word that has to be, and it's a spoken word because it's meant to speak to you and give us a message in a time where we would have doubt because our faith is faulty. If something is written, it cannot be rescinded. In the times of Mashiach, however, when everyone will prophesy, we learn in the verse, it says, and after that, and we'll see what happens before, I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your children, your sons and daughters will prophesy. Your elders will have dreams, divine dreams. No, yes. Yechalmun, it also doubles the word dreams by also the Bachareim, the adolescent, the teenagers. Chazyena Yisiru. It repeats the word dream, so there is a connection between there seems to be two levels of the age of adolescence here. The Bacharim, the bachelors. One that has dreams just like the elders. He's living in the elders' world. And then there's the true spirit of the Bacharim, where they have vision, chazyenas. They will see. So I want to get into that verse and its preceding one here. But the point is that the idea of prophecy being poured out like a spirit onto us has to be understood. And I was trying to figure out what it could mean. And I explored a few. It could be through meditation. Why not? We become accomplished in meditation. Someone finally spills the beans on all the secrets of how you do it. And therefore, through meditation, we have this promise of pouring spirit upon us. Or it could be through psychedelics. Why not? It could be that some people have bad vision on psychedelics because they might have bad character. It says that when the Beatles gave LSD to the gurus in India, they didn't say, this is what we always have for breakfast. Not without chemicals. This is what we experience all the time. That's the legend, at least. But I don't have a single source for that, except the fact that the Rebbe is very into technology and science, and the progress of science. Technology corresponds to the pouring out of, or accessibility of wisdom in the world that's promised. And the Rebbe gives certain dates where I think it was the Industrial Revolution is the revolution of mind also, when Hasidus poured out into the world in a way that has never been access to that kind of personal coaching through the spiritual journey that literally will take you there where the Rebbe is himself. Because, you're not going to eat. The reason why your experience will be different than a Rebbe, for example, is because the Rebbe is someone who has a hachana, a preparedness for the soul of a Rebbe is a perfected soul, reflecting how there is a preparedness to receive something higher. Even a tzaddik, even an angel, goes always from strength to strength. Angels incrementally, and souls, at least while they're in a body, can go exponentially, blasting through the stratosphere, depending on our preparation. I'm not one to explain what's involved in preparing the soul of a tzaddik, But you do learn a lot about the tzaddikim through the stories in Tanakh. So we become familiar with that, what that would mean. If there's going to be an outpouring of spirit, what would that look like? Is it a meditation? Is it psychedelics, technology, AI graphics to make us see the Holy of Holies? Or is it through a good, inspiring speech? I often bring to mind the idea that it says on the one hand that Mashiach is going to teach everybody, the Avos down to the smallest. He's going to teach everybody, Moshe Rabbeinu included. Mashiach's going to teach. But it says that you're not going to require a teacher anymore. So I say that what is this teaching that you're not going to give as an instruction? It's reflected beautifully in this parsha that we're learning right now. The role of a prophet is to advise and to bring to you to understand and to make you have daas of the purpose of the shefet, of the sort of divinely authorized teaching of Torah, the written Torah. So the outpouring of spirit that's going to lead to this transformation, this revolution of mind, where we experience Hashem in everything, how is that going to unfold? Is it going to be a good speech? Here the Rebbe emphasizes dibur, that a prophet is someone who specifically articulates. That's why the word navi is from niv sfasayim, when your lips are animated to speak through your ability to articulate. So it is tied in very much to language. One expresses an infinite thought that's beyond language. Therefore, it animates, in a sense, the lips. It's a channeling. Whereas Torah is, of its own accord, something that could remain in thought, in theory. And also the contents of a prophecy, the Rebbe says here in his final speech on this week's Parsha, is connected to the world. So it's connected to speech, which is the lowest of all the... it's lower compared to thought, at least. It's usually representing Malchus. Machshava is usually associated with Bina. Thought is Leah, is Bina, and Rachel is Malchus. Speech and thought, speech instead of thought. Revealing, communicating, being. So the prophecy is usually tied into worldly things, different again from Torah, which transcends the world. Welcome, Ted. Good to see you. We got our watches synchronized. Just think what we could accomplish. It's hard to be a little bit technical about the scheduling here. So Torah is something that speaks about the world, yes, but it transcends the world, and it's the authorship. Prophecy is the second generation. It's already, the authorship is invested in human mind in order for a purpose, because it's about communicating to us, human physical people that need to be inspired in a way that's directed in line with the divine will. So the promise of a prophet is an advisor in the sense that he's speaking, specifically using speech, not thought, something that you can't relate to and remains privy just to the thinker. So that's Torah. Prophecy is something that's meant to be communicated. It's meant to enter the world, transform the world, so that you can become prepared to appreciate the divinity of the moment that we find ourselves in now, and especially as we move through towards the promise of this happening. So this is going to happen. It's going to be through communicating. What are we going to communicate? We're meant to communicate a way to prepare ourselves. The Rebbe goes on to explain it. We dealt with a bit this week. to prepare ourselves to set ourselves with an interface, if you will, to make the vessel that you're going to experience your eternal reward from. We create that interface, that like the palette for the painter is set now. The idea of a shar, we said at length, is the ability to start something. You have the guy who shoots the gun in a race. That precedes the whole thing. So that's Rishona, it's the Rosh Hashanah. It's the head, everything's contained in that decision. Once the gun goes off and the runners are off, you've actually started the thing. Now it's not the dress rehearsal anymore. But before that, when there's a dress rehearsal, when we dress ourselves in the thought, speech, and action of the way that things will be, when we make that a gateway for us to actually prepare ourselves for the way that they are promised to be, then we've set ourselves in motion forever is one thing. Okay, it's perpetual. It's called the Olam Hadin, the world of severity, because it's already been decided. It's yes, it's infinite, but it's infinite from a certain perspective that you had through the course of your soul's journey and all your incarnations in the world. But particularly the final generation that's intended to be the ones to enter into this world, and progressively as our generation to generation, going from dream to the elders. The Bachrim have some dream, yes, but also a vision. And then our children, the next generation, it's all about prophecy. Prophecy here, where the emphasis is, and we're learning in waves as people arrive, I try and catch them up. Tied into the world. It's tied into speech, which is Malchus, and tied into the world, which is the world of Asiya, the physical world. The way things turn out here. That's why prophets tell events of future occurrences that happen in the world. And they don't tell you like, someone's going to get a great idea and it will never come to the fore. If a tree falls in the forest, does anyone hear? But something that's specifically intended to affect the world. So it's communicated for the sake of the people that live in the world, in order to change and transform that world, to make it more in line with the preparedness for the shape of things that is required, the world of peace and harmony, a world of freedom from strife and preoccupation with making a living. When you have peace, you have abundance, as King Solomon proved. That's why you have to put up with 1,000 wives. I mean that in the sense, not that there's anything wrong with his wives. I'm sure they were fantastic people, but it becomes an obligation to each of them. There are inherent obligations in taking on people into your household. So he was a tremendous Mesiras Nefesh for Shlomo HaMelech to have such a diplomacy that he has to marry the princesses of every nation. But it was an idea of a worldly solution to a worldly problem. How could you have peace? How could everyone enjoy life like me? He wanted to make a world of such abundance that everyone could live like kings. And they were all invited to his table, 30,000 people at his table every day for brunch. That's a big table. He wasn't chosen for that to actually succeed. Perhaps because it wasn't the time for it, that's such a base solution. It's involving marriage and so much emphasis on physical things. Maybe the time wasn't right. Maybe we haven't rectified the world at that point enough for that time to be right. But what happens when we do achieve that after the final birur, the final rectification, the world is no longer a threat anymore? I'm not saying to tear down the mechitza, chas v'shalom. Make a more beautiful mechitza. Make one that you actually relate to. That's the promise of prophecy by our children. Because you won't need the officers anymore, as the Rebbe explains here and ties in. The officers are replaced with the prophets, someone who shows you the divinity in your way of thinking, in a language that you hear and relate to, the language that speaks to you. Because it's all about you, it's all about your physical, whatever actually occupies our mind, whatever it is, that's called our world. So the prophecy is always about things that are relevant to you, because it's sharecha, your gateways, that we're taking it. When our gateways don't require anymore an officer, it requires prophecy, it requires authentic, inspired interaction with our environment. Prophecy in every single area, and constantly. We learned the other day, and we're going to learn again today if we ever get to the sources. And just to add that even when the prophet here, okay, in general, it's quoting Rambam, the prophet has prophecy when it's just related to the prophet himself, or herself, could be intended to expand his daas, his ability to experience infinity a little bit better, with a prophecy that's personal and not intended to be spoken to anyone else. That too is for the sake of everyone else, because the prophet, or we're speaking specifically about prophets here, will require that in some way to enhance the world and the betterment of people. So Neves Vasayim, the lips uttering, is always about being heard by another person and inspiring. Even if it's a rebuke, as it was throughout the Tanakh, the Bible's rich with rebuking, you better get back on the path messages. The promise of everyone prophesying is saying, we don't need that song anymore. We're on to the new song, the permanent song of total commitment, because our mind is filled with one thing. We all share the common purpose of seeing divinity in every single moment, all the time. That's the promise. How is everyone going to go there? Is it through meditation? In other words, our efforts, through our prayer? I've spoken about that zillions of times. Dvekis is probably related to that. Is it through psychedelics? Some technology is going to take us, AI is going to take us there, or a combination, of course. Or is it going to be through the seeing of divinity in every aspect of your life? So Nevuah is about physical things. It's about seeing in your life, being given the right perspective. So the Navi is a yayet, he's an advisor, to help you have a perspective, to see how everything is clarified, everything is rectified. Welcome. Everything is already clear. If we have a prophet that does that for us, if we take that message to the people go out of their little world, and their home becomes the universe. And it shines and lights other people up. So I think the main revolution of mind that's promised, the promise of prophecy for all of our children, all of our sons and daughters, is when our authentic demand of the outside is matched with our inner commitment to integrity. When those things are aligned, our children and us, and the child in us, right, will all sing the new song of authentic, inspired purpose. We will all be lit with prophecy, because we'll see how attainable it is, and how real it is, and how transformative it is, that the world now is become something that is predicted. If you have a prophet's advice, he tells you where you can find your donkeys. King Shaul HaMelech, before he was anointed, was looking for advice from the prophet about how he can honor his father by getting back his flock. That is something that related to what was important to him at that time. The prophet was there to guide him, so that does not become his preoccupation. He had a bigger mission. He had to assume the throne, King Saul. So the way that this is going to happen, and look, we're talking about Malahar Deas Hashem, the entire earth, the earthiness of the world itself is going to be preoccupied with knowledge of Hashem. What does it mean, knowledge? It means experience of Hashem. To live it, to engage deeply in recognizing the divinity in whatever you're doing at any time. And that's called the pouring out of spirit, al kol basar, to our flesh itself. If we have that kind of healthy vision, our bodies would heal and accommodate the vision, which is not to be intended as a preoccupation with health. Health is a product of good thinking. The good thinking here is the promise of the pouring out of Hashem's spirit al kol basar, and kol flesh, v'nibu b'neichem, leading to prophecy. Why? So that they could share that inspiration with someone else. All it takes is an authentic commitment to truth. Be truthful with yourself and allow this to pour out of you. The Malbim explains, we learned yesterday, I'm just going to finish off with the preceding Malbim on the preceding verse, because it's interesting. There is a framework of time that's discussed in these verses. Joel 3:1 and 2:27 preceding it. Because the Malbim points out in this verse, when it says that God will pour out His Spirit upon all flesh, your daughters and your sons and daughters will prophecy. That's because it's reflecting a state of Malahar Deas Hashem. It says everyone is going to be immersed in the knowledge of Hashem. In a sense, that implies that it's equal. But how is it equal when we say that it is, and this is his resolution, the Malbim resolves this by saying that it's relative to the perspective of each little fish in the pond. Yes, we're all immersed in the same Das of Hashem, but every fish has their own perspective. The more you've prepared, the more sophisticated your experience of divinity forevermore will be. We have a certain amount of time to create that. That's what we're creating our palace as we speak. Okay, so that's the Malbim we learned yesterday, introduced by the Rebbe's final talk. And now just to see something, because this verse that we were just talking about, when God's going to pour out His Spirit, it says, V'haya acharei chen. That's the second stage. The first stage, I want to just turn a glance to, and this is my first gloss of this with you. So it's premiere broadcast, let's call it. Like through the week, I sort of layer it. So I introduce a new idea when it's on the fly, usually. The one time I prepare is on Shabbos. That's supposed to be my preparedness for the entire week, and we just sort of we surf it together on the waves, reviewing a little bit, and then as I have time, I find different things. So here it says Acharei chen. This is what's going to be afterwards. Great, I've already achieved the final objective, and prophecies poured out on everybody. We were discussing how could it come to that. What way? Is it meditation? Is it technology, or is it good advice? In case my way of summarizing it there. A yayetz, the prophet becomes a yayetz, an advisor. He speaks so that you can hear and transform. It's much more about speech than about technology or meditation, which is also thought. Except when you daven, it's more associated with speech. So davening, prayer fits in nicely here. But the third, and the one I prefer to say, it's going to happen that way. Because it just seems more in line with the Rebbe's vision here. So anyways, the preceding verse is therefore very, very important to us. We are talking about a time that's promised for at least 31 years. The promise of a time that only a prophet can say, the Rebbe here, saying, the only determinable prophet in our times, I think you could say, or maybe some equivalent that I've never familiarized myself with. But the Rebbe said, as a prophecy, the time is now. Only a prophet can say that, because who has the vision that could see what's before our eyes? So why don't we see it? There's a time we have to, now all we have to do is open our eyes. Here the Rebbe says there's a gateway to get there. It's the beginning stage of it, but the beginning stage is not everyone hears the trigger when the race starts. Not everybody listens to that, and therefore a lot of people are still in their Nikes, ready to go, but not actually kicking up dust. Medanim Mitzuyim Ka'afar, the dust is kicked up. And we're just lost in the dust. Madan Mitzuyim Ka'afar. I mean, the CEOs take everything, and all the poor people. Inflation. The promise is recognized in the Gemara in Sanhedrin. It talks about all the prices are going to be equal. What? The prices vacillate from. Nobody knows the price of anything anymore. I think it means that it becomes completely arbitrary. Nothing has any value. It's completely arbitrary. Everything, even commodities, can become arbitrary somehow. I mean, the black market has different prices. How long is it going to take me to get my silver into cash? When you go to kids are trading in commodities. I'm telling you. Anyways, maybe I'm wrong. So I wanted to look on the preceding verse. What is the stage that's going to precede this? No matter how it happens, I gave 3 different options of how it could be just from the top of my head. Let's see what the Torah says in the preceding verse. This is only talking about after. What's the first stage? The verse says, V'yidaitem, there is going to be das. Ki b'kerev Yisrael ani, that within amongst the Jewish people I am, Hashem Elokeichem, I'm the Lord your God. And there is nothing else besides me. You will never be ashamed again, forever. So the first word, v'yidaitem, you're going to come to das. Malbim says, v'yidaitem, tchila mar v'halaltem Hashem Hashem. He says there's another stage before this that's connected. It's about praising Hashem. The praising, the halaltem, the hallel that we sing to Hashem. We just came from Rosh Chodesh, we sang hallel. We praised Hashem through the words of David HaMelech, Psalms, King David. We praise Hashem, and that brings to da'as, the next stage. There's 3 stages here. You have praising, you have da'as, which I'm always talking about. I think that's the middle stage that we're in. And then you have prophecy, the promise of prophecy to everyone. How's it going to happen? You're going to force someone to put mushrooms in their diet? That doesn't make sense. I mean, I really hate the idea of a pharmacocracy. The pharmacy controls you. Great. That's all we've accomplished in our history. So da'as is the key, I think. V'yidaitem, it is tied in with meditation. V'yidaitem tchila mar v'hilaltem. First, it starts with praising Hashem. V'Hashem meira'al parsumay l'marachik. And Hashem shines back. So you praise Hashem, and Hashem shows his, very publicly, to the distance he shows, Ki bizman hazeh lo yadu es Hashem ba'atzmai. Because prior to that time, I guess during the time of praising Hashem, even during that, we go to shul and we say words, but do you feel like you come out of there a new person? Which is what is intended to do? You should come out of there sweating like you went to the gym. Because in our times, the Malbim writes here, Lo yadu es Hashem ba'atzmai. We don't know Hashem en masse personally. Right, Selamar, meaning Shetiya Shechina Kavua b'neihem, that you have the Shechina, you could say you had tea with the Shechina yesterday afternoon. That's how Kavua it is. You meet regularly or all the time. Can you say that? Do you have das? Right, Selamar Shetiya Shechina Kavua b'neihem b'derech ployi tamid. In a miraculous way, you are always inspired. Have you achieved that? That's das. Maybe the day it's ploy tamid. I would imagine your body either doesn't need rest at that point. You've healed so much. Chiyas amesim doesn't have to be through going back to the petri dish. You can actually take your body there through this b'derech ploy tmidi, constant miraculous presence of Hashem, or presence of mind connecting with this awareness. Ve'ein mahalim rak lishmaya mefursam l'chol. When we talk about praising Hashem, we only relate to Hashem with the divine name that expresses the way the world experience is at the time. That's when it calls the nation praising Hashem in the name that associates, like Elohim is about severity. Havaya is about compassion usually, or creation. L'chol al yidei hashkacha hakelelas, through these general providence of events that we feel protection from Hashem. But a day comes, the Malbim writes here, based on this verse, Yael 2:27, right before the 3rd chapter, which speaks about prophecy. There's going to be Daas. Okay? And that will be B'derech Ploi Tmidi, miraculous, constant awareness. When you praise, that's only about the way you see the events transpire, the things that are relevant to you, which we spoke about. When you experience, is you become part of the unfolding of that. It's not just like a reassurance, it's an experience. Das. So in the future to come, there comes a day, you're going to know with a very exact, precise experience. It's going to be clear, as if you felt it with the sense of touch. Okay, so that's, I think, was very relevant. The idea of the Saginar, the blind tzaddik there, the Makubal, who was able to perceive in the atmosphere. We also spoke about the ability to Mayrach V'dayan. Mashiach is going to be able to smell. It's also about the environment, the atmosphere, and judge and find justice and good, compassionate advice. We've spoken about here many times. Which is the superpower of Mashiach. It's compassionate advice. That's a good title. Okay, so the Malbim here starts, as the verse starts, with the idea of Da'as. He says that's different than just praising. This is now when you actually connect with the one you're praising. You experience it, and it's going to be, that's the promise of a constant attainment of that state in a miraculous way. So there is going to be this outpouring that comes to those who take this path. They'll see incredible, it's like when you play guitar. I'm going to practice for a half an hour a day. The next week, you're a different player, completely. Welcome. When you actually do something you never practice davening, try it for a week to actually focus on it, and it's a different experience entirely. So that's Da'as. The Yedaitam, you're going to know that within Hashem, within the Jewish people is Hashem. So as opposed to being a sort of a general commitment of faith, the promise of the future to come is that everyone is going to have clarity of experience with every moment, not just with the general events, the current events that you get on your stream, on your news media stream. Ki b'kerev Yisrael ani, what are you going to know? That I'm amidst the Jewish people? Shani masmid liyais b'kirbam. I am very diligent in being there, Hashem says in this verse in Joel 2:27. I'm constantly within you, umishalach b'seikam, mingling among you, walking with you. I don't allow you, thank you, to fall to the pitfalls of nature, natural. If it probably left to the laws of nature, we would have a blizzard that would cover the entire planet on Snowpiercer or something like that. If we let the politicians have their war games amongst each other, there won't be anything left. There's miraculous providence that we have to feel in a constant way, not just in terms of the general events that affects us, but as a personal present tense of intensity, of experience. to experience every moment, just like the sort of cliche Zen state of the now being everything. That's the promise of the reality that's going to be. And then what's going to look like? You're going to see that I've been walking with you all the time, and I'm there with you now. And it's not nature that you're sort of, you got to figure out all the ricochet patterns of life and bow your head, as Deep Purple teach us. It's a random world of bullets flying, and you have to bow your head. You have to be humble and know that the only way you could possibly survive is if someone's guiding you through that. Like they do that laser thing when the kids climb through it. You touch the laser and you're out, or you didn't make it to the end. If you had someone guiding you, a coach, a spiritual coach called your higher self, your Godhead, talking to you all the time, and you see Hashem walking with you through every event in a constant way, you're not going about randomly in a natural organic world. There is divine particular providence for each person. Hashem is said to take us all by the hand in the final redemption. Rakani Hashem Elokeichem, the verse continues, it's just that I am the Lord your God, and there's nothing else. She'teva v'maracha ein la shum kayach. Nature and the matrix, maracha, doesn't that mean matrix, have no power. Ki hakol munhag menhagas nisses, because everything is miraculous. If God makes a story and creates the rules for the story as you go, it doesn't make for a good science fiction film when every single premise makes no sense. Have one small premise, it's froze. Okay, I get you, it froze. We don't have to go through the science, I'm not interested anyways. So what are you going to do? What's going to happen to the world? So it's all imagination from there. If it's realistic, you'll care. If not, you're a child. And that's how Hollywood works these days. So we are going to recognize that there's no other force that is running the matrix. It's not some evil AI that doesn't care and that just uses us for body heat. So Mark Zuckerberg wants to put us all in these suntan beds and just have goggles on so our eyes wouldn't get blown into smithereens when the kids are going to go into more Vietnam, digital Vietnam. That's where we want our kids' heads. It's telling us something that we can access a very engaged state in our children. We just have to use technology and everything for that purpose. Everything that you wake up to in the morning should be directed to one common purpose. We have a purpose in this world. It's not just how many sitcoms you could pack in your belt, if there was such a thing anymore. Now it's a TikTok. Everything is with miraculous providence, without any intermediary. That's just binary code that can be changed like that. When a person surfs the matrix properly, it cracks for them. That's the intention of the Torah to teach us that. Here it's the words of the prophets, because they're meant to talk in words that we understand. Things that are relevant to us, we have to see miraculous providence in, and constantly feel that. We're not in a matrix. We are connecting with the author of our souls. Wow, how intimate is that? That's the story that's unfolding before our eyes. Is Hashem, I'm walking across the street with you. I'm going to the bank with you. I'm going to calm my dog down with you. Sit. Sit. Miss. Miss. Sit. Miss. Not a good demonstration of what I'm talking about. Miss. Sit. Sit. Too many Scooby biscuits. That's spoiled. Too many Scooby biscuits for you, Miss. Miss, sit down. Sit. 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 That's a good girl. She's a puppy. I think she just turned one. I saw a rat running by here this morning, and it's not like it's a gorgeous area where I'm renting here now. But there's still rats. I guess it's the more ravinish you are, the more like wildlife you take into your backyard. Very pretty. in Crown Heights, everybody had cockroaches. It wasn't just for the poor people. It's an equal thing. So just to finish up with this album, just a few more lines. What did you find already? You found one of those rats from last night? Thank you, Erez Shmuel. Yeah, I love it here. It's wonderful. Baruch Hashem, thank God. Okay, so to finish off this album, so when you have this awareness, and that becomes your experience, that you recognize that there's God's with you in a miraculous, constant way, once you connect with that, you will never be ashamed forever. The verse continues. So the Malbim comments. First it says you're not going to be ashamed of your bad deeds. Miss Nugget. At first it says you're going to not be ashamed of your deeds. And now the verse is added. That the Shekhinah itself was not ever departing from your life experience. That shame of feeling like we pushed Hashem away will also be corrected. There's nothing there. Okay? And that's just the air conditioner. She's sniffing. There's a sound, there must be a smell somewhere around there, right? Right, Schnitzel? So we will also lose shame of thinking that we push the Shekhinah away at any time. It's not just about what we did wrong, but the Shekhinah was also there. The fact that in the second temple, you didn't have the special Moses stick and the ark. You didn't have those things. They're all concealed. So therefore, we didn't have the symbols of showing that the divine presence rested amongst us, even though that for 420 years we had a holy temple there. Like it was in the times of King Shlomo, King Solomon, first temple. So we are not going to be ashamed of even that stage when God was not overtly showing his miraculous presence. Because we have the opportunity to return to the way we were in the times of the first temple. And that's the promise of the end of times. We will be that inspired. We will be brought back into the world, be that present, that we will be able to bring on this stage where our children are brought up in such a beautiful home that they naturally have prophecy and are able to shine in light and communicate and inspire other people. And that's the promise of the end of days. When the time of redemption comes, as it continues to discuss in detail all the promises of a perfected world. Have a great day.